There are millions who are serving in incredible contexts, doing incredible work, and who are so under-resourced. So for us, we get to provide environments of retreat, encouragement, safety, transformation. And the beauty of our organization is we have partners all over the globe who invest in rest. Yes, it rhymes. Who invest in rest so that those leaders can have those services at no cost to them.
I'm really excited to have joining me Nathan LaGrange, who's the executive director of Oasis. We're going to talk about everything related to rest, to hospitality, for taking care of people who are taking care of others. Nathan, thanks you so much for taking time to speak with us today.
Oh, thank you, Josiah. And huge props to you. If you're listening to this in any way, shape, or form, Josiah has a treasure trove of wisdom and information that's out there, like inspirational stuff, things that'll challenge you. I literally had my phone out during one of the podcasts and like just typing a bunch of stuff. Like, I'm going to steal that. I'm going to take that. So well done.
Thank you. You're very kind. And it's conversations like these that get me so excited every day, because people like yourself are on the forefront of providing hospitality. I want to get into, what you're doing, what the organization is, but I wanted to set the stage. I always love starting with the why, right?
Yeah, for
sure. Why
are
we doing this? And you and I had a chance to speak yesterday a little bit about rest and the importance of rest. We're heading into a holiday season, which can be a little bit crazy, but
Chaotic.
Would love to get your take on, in general, why do we need rest?
Oh, my goodness gracious. What a great question. And I think it's a question worth answering. I think for me, for years, I spent time in corporate world for a bit and in ministry world. We never talked about this kind of stuff. Or if you did, it was on the fringes. And you were the weirdo guy over here that was like, we all need a rest in some way, shape, or form. And we're just, nose to the grindstone going forward. We're trying to create, build, do all these kind of things. But I think it goes back to design. So you have to ask yourself, like, how was I originally designed? And you were designed for rest. It's built into like the DNA of who you are as a human being to have seasons of rest and seasons of work. So if one of those is out of balance, if you just rest all the time, then we call you lazy. But if you work all the time, we go, well done, Josiah, great job. Why don't you burn yourself out and have a very short career? Like what gives here? So I think for me, the why was, how can we strike a balance? And especially in our world with ministry leaders, how can we strike that balance between work and rest, between the like being and doing side of being a human being? And I think for me, I watched so many of my good friends. I watched, my own narrative in life. And I'm like, is there a better way to do this? Like, there's a great biblical verse that says, there's a way that seems right to a man, but in the end, it leads to death. And you're like, well, it seems right. So working all the time and achieving seems right. I'm getting affirmed. I may be getting, monetarily affirmed in some way, shape, or form. But something in my soul is starting to wither and die. So I think, and our organization thinks, that we can discover that through rest, that rest, retreat, encouragement, safety, transformation literally changes everything.
I love it. I'm sold. And even throughout this year, I think there's been moments where I've been close to burnout, where I love what I do, but you can kind of reach the end of your rope. Yes. And you kind of just feel like I need to stop and rest. I'm curious what you've learned about how do you rest well? It sounds like a simple, stupid question, but let's say you take some time to disconnect from work. What do you do then to get in a state where you can really rest?
Yeah, I think we're so used to producing, and I'm speaking to myself here. Like, I value the production that I can bring to the table. And I think, again, we often get affirmed by what we produce. What do you do when you're not producing? And how do you peel away from a moment in time to where you leave the work unfinished and allow yourself to recharge and refresh in some way, shape, or form? I think a lot of this stuff, and we don't need to lay on a couch and talk about all of it, but it's like we are modeled this in our home environments sometimes drive this whole idea of undue expectations, and I got to be on all the time, and I've got to be. It's more like what I do is who I am. Well, that's not true. Like, I don't even introduce myself as the executive director of Oasis Rest. I introduce myself as Nathan. And I have this amazing wife of 27 years, and I have these 4 incredible kids, and I have beautiful daughter-in-laws, and I have an amazing grandchild, and we'll get to the work thing in a bit. But it's like identity sometimes comes through what we do. What if we could get identity by just being? Like just being a son or a daughter, or just being in a space to fill your own soul up. And it feels selfish. This is the thing I find with like high producers. If I ask them like what drains you, they can tell me a million things. If I ask you what fills you, I don't know. Okay, so all you do, and again, we say this with tongue in cheek, but all you do is pour out and you never pour in. How long is that going to last? Well, it feels so selfish to be, or right. But I mean, you go back to the adage of, the airplane of like putting your own oxygen mask on first. Well, yeah, duh. But what about life? How do you refuel? How do you rekindle? How do you refresh? Because you're going to be asked to pour out. How do you get poured into? So I think it's, people are like, is there one way? Is there two ways? No, it's kind of based on your personality. For some people, it's, I just love to curl up by the fire with a good book. Great. That's refreshing to you. Yeah, but it feels selfish. But are you a better human being when you come out of that moment? Well, yeah, people tell me I am. So do it. Oh, I get refreshed by going out and working in the woods or, messing around in the yard or whatever it is. Did you feel better after you come out of that? Yeah, I love it. So why don't you do it more often? So I think, again, for me, it's like, how do you find opportunities to refresh your own soul? And then how do you get people around you who can ask you, hey, Josiah, when's the last time you took a refreshing retreat? And you just watch people blank stare you, that nervous tick of 2 years ago. You're like, okay, so you're running at an unsustainable pace. Why don't you peel off for a little bit and get refreshed and renewed?
I love that piece about having people around you that will call this out, right? But it's also something we can do as friends, as people, coworkers, right? Is kind of noticing this of others. And I want to get to how you're doing this in your work today. But I'm curious for yourself, can you recall a recent example of a time that you took a break, you got some rest, and how did
Yes.
that feel for you?
It's rejuvenating. And as a guy who leads a rest organization, I am in danger sometimes of becoming a victim of the very thing that I'm trying to, advocate against, like busyness and crazy and burning out, all that kind of stuff. But I think for me personally, when I can peel away, we've got 3.5 acres here just north of Atlanta that we live in, and I love being in nature. So if you can peel me out in nature, even if that means I jump on a Zoom call and literally for the 15 minutes between the next Zoom call, I just take a lap around our property, like that's pretty low hanging fruit. Like I can do that. I could also do 20 million things in that 15 minutes because I've got them to do. But I'm like, I want to be very present for this next moment. So you can do small rejuvenation type things like that if you've got a place to, tuck away or get some quiet. You can do bigger episodic type deals where it's a little more planned out. I always try to encourage people, if you're going to go away and do a retreat, don't go somewhere crazy exotic that's got a million moving parts to it because you're going to be just more stressed out when you get there than before. Find a quiet place. Maybe that's an Airbnb close by or a hotel that's nearby that you can just go, peel away. And here's the big one for me, Josiah. I have to be in a place where I don't have any responsibilities. In other words, take care of me. Let me be in a hospitable place where somebody else is literally setting the table. Somebody else is providing the environment and I can just walk into it and just be. That's rejuvenating for my soul.
That's why I love hospitality, right? There's a business of hospitality that I think is interesting, but at the root of it, it is that sense of hospitality. And
Yes.
I'm curious, I always love asking people, what is hospitality to you? Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Oh, heavens, yes. Here's what I think for me, hospitality wise. I think there is an art to hospitality. In our organization, in Oasis R.E.S.T International, attentive hospitality is our number one value. Number one. And for our organization, we deal with pastors, we deal with global workers, that humanitarian person, that traditional missionary that's out there around the world. And we also deal with Christian leaders. So oftentimes these are people like literally on the platform, pouring out all the time, doing the thing. We want to be attentive to them because they're often so attentive to everybody else. So if you're in the slums in Kenya and you're continually feeding people or doing healthcare initiatives, or you're, in a large congregation, or you're leading some kind of Christian endeavor, whatever the case might be, you're used to just pouring out and being. So how do we get an art of hospitality for your life? How do we make sure that you're now being poured into? So there's actually 3 things that we really look at in this attentive hospitality. Number 1, for me, hospitality is human. The minute we lose the humanity, the minute we lose the person-to-person transaction when it comes to hospitality, the minute when somebody's just, like numbers on a credit card that we're running through a transactional machine, we've lost something. Like we have lost the beauty of the humanity in that moment. And I think when I think of the people that come to our place or they go to, a hotel, restaurant, resort, whatever the case might be, it's like we've got an opportunity to enter into the humanity of their story right where they are. Because there's a good chance they're coming from somewhere, they're doing something, and then they're heading off to somewhere else. And we have them for that moment. And they may have not been treated very well in the past, or maybe they're headed into a really hard season in the future. but let's like let our hospitality be human in this moment. Like engage with the story, engage with the smile. You see somebody that's down, ask them about it. We like to say we have non-intrusive availability. This is what we do in our place. Like I'm not up in your grill the whole time because that's just annoying. But it's like in our hospitality, if you're serving at a restaurant or a hotel, like be aware, be attentive, watch eye movements, watch facial features, watch the way people interact, and then figure out how can I insert myself in a hospitable way in that moment. I always think this, like from the humanity standpoint, the minute that we can recognize, oh, maybe there's something, an interesting dynamic that's going on between husband and wife here, and I'm not going to ask them, hey, how's your marriage? But I could maybe do something. I could run out and grab a bottle of champagne, or get them some chocolates or flowers, or whatever the case might be. I think the humanity of this is so beautiful, because who's to say that couple that's coming into your restaurant, that this isn't their last ditch effort at their marriage? Like, this is it. This conversation that's going to take place over this table, this may make it or break it. Or who's to say that family that's at your resort or your theme park or wherever the case might be, like this is their last moment to reconnect before everybody scatters and disappears. Like, we hold and wield incredible power. And so if we could see people as humans with story, oh, now all of a sudden, like we can really serve them well. Like you're in my house, like you're in my world now. I'm going to take such good care of you. So again, I can rattle about this stuff all day, but for me, hospitality is human. The second thing for me, which I think is very important in the attentive hospitality side, is hospitality is healing. It's healing. People are walking in, if you're walking into a boutique place or you're walking into a high rise in Tokyo, it doesn't matter. You may be carrying like physical baggage with you, suitcases, luggages, all those kinds of things. If it's a little more high end, somebody's going to jump out. They're going to take care of that, throw it on a cart, throw it up to your room, right? But when you go to that desk, you're also carrying around like emotional, spiritual, mental, relational baggage. And we can be a healing place. Like we can actually offer healing. You may be coming in at a very vulnerable moment. Again, something going on in your life that we don't know about until we interact with you. But if I just treat you transactionally and not as a human, I'm not going to seize that opportunity to be healing in my hospitality. I think it's no coincidence that hospitality has the word hospital right inside of it. I mean, come on. And I think about the vulnerable state that people come to us, especially at Oasis R.E.S.T International. We deal with a lot of weary leaders, a lot of very broken, sometimes traumatized people. And it's like, can our space be a place of healing for you? We have to be very attentive in that. You go to a hospital, if you go under the knife, you are incredibly vulnerable. I mean, you're unconscious, for crying out loud. So it's like, when you come out of that moment, you want care, right? And we've all been a part of the opposite side. That hospital was a horrible experience. Why? They didn't care for me very well. Well, what does it look like in our hotels, our restaurants, our entertainment, our hospitality industry to say we can be ambassadors of healing for this couple, for this single, for this businessman or woman, or for this family? What an opportunity, because we could also be the inverse. We could be agents of like more trauma and more pain, and they can't, something goes wrong and now all of a sudden their vacation is ruined, when all it would have taken is just somebody stepping in attentively. I got you. I'm going to take care of you. Don't you worry about it. I remember my daughter years ago when she was real little, we were at one of the big theme parks, and she bashed her teeth in on the railing that was right there. Like I had her, and then she just jumped out, and all of her teeth shove up into her mouth. I mean, there's blood everywhere. It's like a war zone in there. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And there was a young staffer right there. And that young staffer was also like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. But thankfully, there was kind of a veteran staffer off in the distance, came right up. I got you. I'll take care of you. We're going to get your daughter to this, medical station over here. And by the way, little girl, would you love a little dress? Would you like, she owned the moment. And it was so healing for us. It's like, it's easy to do, low hanging fruit. So it's both the idea of hospitality being, human, of being healing. And for us, hospitality is hope. If I see you as a human being, I recognize maybe some of the brokenness that's there, the healing that can occur. I can create moments where hope is restored in your life, or hope is renewed, and you leave this space better than you came in. And even if it's just a glimmer, it's an amazing opportunity. So for our places, people come in battle weary. They haven't had a chance to process anything. They leave, and I read all of our guest surveys. They leave with hope. Did we solve all their problems? Nope. Probably didn't solve any of their problems, but we gave them hope, and they're walking out of that space filled with hope. So hospitality, for me, there's an art to it, and we have a great power to wield in it.
I feel like when you kind of start to see the impact on people's lives and the ways that you can apply this both in a work context and in your personal life, it becomes really, really
It's
exciting.
huge.
I would love to talk a little bit about an area that your organization focuses, and that is taking care of providing hospitality to people who take care of others. You alluded to
Exactly.
this, and it's interesting. My dad was a pastor. I saw him, growing up in this world of ministry, always him and my mom were just always giving out to people around them. And, I've gotten to know other people that are kind of in that world. And it's you and I were talking before we started recording around the challenges I think that we've both seen where,
Yes.
if you're a corporate executive, you can probably take yourselves to fancy resorts. And for the folks that are really spending their time, whether it's in a ministry context or some other services, nurses, community leaders, there's so many different range of giving out. What have you kind of seen? Let's talk about the need first to tee this up, and I want to get into what you're doing. I guess beyond what we've talked about specifically in this context of people who are providing ministry. What is the need that you've seen?
Well, I think you articulated it so well yesterday, and I remember the three things you said because there are three very important things. You said number one, they're always on. Those ministry leaders are always on. They're either on a platform, they're out in a field, they're serving needs. When they're sitting down at dinner with their family, their phone is still on and somebody may have a critical and boom, you're gone. Or that baseball game is missed because they're always on in some way, shape, or form. I think the second thing you might have mentioned was the expectation side, like high expectations. Like we want our leaders to be who they say they are, but sometimes we put unhealthy expectations up on them. So not only are they on a platform, we put them on a pedestal. And now all of a sudden, when they make just human decisions, or I'm not talking about the traumatic ones, just regular, normal decisions, we're like, oh, do you really think you need that new pair of shoes? Because I'm not sure that that's really biblical. And you're like, wait, what? What is the deal? And I think to your third point, it's like they're under-resourced. Like they're typically under-resourced. Yes, there is 0.00001% of ministry professionals who ride around in private jets. It is just a minuscule amount of people. And there are millions who are serving in incredible contexts, doing incredible work, and who are so under-resourced. So for us, we get to provide environments of retreat, encouragement, safety, transformation. And the beauty of our organization is we have partners all over the globe who invest in R.E.S.T. Yes, it rhymes. Who invest in R.E.S.T. so that those leaders can have those services at no cost to them. And that is a beautiful piece of our ministry.
That's crazy at no cost. I mean,
it is
so much
crazy.
of the world of hospitality, it's everything's expensive, especially in the last couple of years, right? And so, but it's interesting to me because I think when you and I first connected, it was funny, and I was telling you yesterday that I've just always been kind of thinking about this, is just like observing this growing up, and you kind of just think like, I love the power of hospitality. It seems out of reach for the people that need it most.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about the organization? And
sure,
because again, crazy, you're providing this for free. How does that work?
We always say it's not for free. We always want to clarify that. It comes at a cost. Yeah. And for us, that follows a really overarching narrative of the God that we claim to follow. So everything does come at a cost. He just happened to pay it for you. So for us, we're like, how do we embody that? How do we raise up men and women all over the United States and around the world? That's the beauty of our organization, and around the world, who say, I believe in this so much, and I see the ripple effect. If you want to end homelessness, we do that. You want to stop sex trafficking in the Philippines, we do that too. You want to engage in, small and large congregations, we're a part of that conversation. You want to be a part of global, work around the world, we do that because we impact the leader. Because we have the leader in our space being refreshed, refueled, rejuvenated, and restored to go out and do that work. So, again, for your listeners out there are some of you out there that are like, man, this is really resonating with me. Go to oasisrest.org/give and please partner with us, because we truly see you as a partner in this type of ministry. There are some folks who are like, pastors and missionaries, they don't need this kind of stuff. They're fine. Really? Have you talked to them lately? Yeah, they told me they were fine. Well, they told me that they weren't, because they're going to be a bit more vulnerable for us. And so when we offer that place of retreat, encouragement, safety, transformation, and we do it at no cost to them, all of a sudden they're on the receiving end. Those who are used to pouring out, those who are used to refreshing the refreshers, or caring for those who, are in the congregation or mission field, they're receiving. And all of a sudden that hospitality has opened up their heart, and they'll tell you everything because they feel safe with you. These people are attentive to me. They love on me. They do this. So we get to do this all around the world. 20 years ago, a man way smarter than me, David Grissom, actually started this. He was a person that was on the field in Behind the Iron Curtain, and he just came home and he was worn out. He was a strong Dutchman, and he sat down in his chair one day and just could not get up because he was just spent. And so for him, he was like, there's a need in me. There's got to be a need in others. And he started kind of this small mom and pop style kind of deal called Life Impact back then, which has now become Oasis R.E.S.T International. So we have hosted places all around the globe, homes of hospitality that are staffed by highly skilled men and women, proficient in coaching, proficient in being able to help somebody unpack past trauma, being able to like go through a season of life that was very difficult. And then again, set them on the course to hope. Like, we're going to send you out of this place more hope-filled than you were by loving on you well, by being very attentive. We a bit shy away from the large group retreats, partly because we feel like there's more effectiveness in the intimacy, either that one-on-one or two-on-two, if it's a couple or maybe a family there as well. But we don't have to have any competition. Like, your story of success or your story of brokenness has no competition in this place. It's just you we're focused on. And we watch people like literally sit at a dinner table and they grab their plate and they stand up, and you watch one of our hosts go, put that down. You're not doing anything like that here. And you could just see him like, I don't know what to do. If I was at a high paying restaurant, I would expect that. But I'm here, and you're helping me navigate my soul, and you're doing it in such a sweet and gentle way that I feel very safe in this place. And I want to tell you about this. And they'll inevitably tell you some story where for a lot of our hosts, it's like, oh my gosh, like, no wonder you're walking around with a limp. Let us help you navigate that through. Let us help you see the hope in it. I love vineyards. Vineyards are one of my favorite places in the world to go. So your world out in California, like, yeah,
we got a
few.
few.
You've got a couple of them. You can throw. Now it's funny, here in northern Georgia, we have an amazing amount of it. They call it the Napa of the South. Is it? Maybe, but the views are beautiful. So vineyards are incredible. But I think what's beautiful for a leader, and most leaders have had some high degree of suffering in their life. Either that's corporate decisions they've had to make, personnel decisions, if it's in the ministry context, with congregations, mission sending, whatever, or just like trauma in their own life, like grief or loss or pain or confusion, like my faith feels shattered in this. Vineyards are great because those vines that are grown like in best sun, best soil, best conditions, best water, best everything, they're like, it's wine. It's good. It's not bad. But the stuff that's like bad soil, bad sun, bad conditions, like the rocky stuff, that's what you pay high dollar for, because it's complex. It's interesting. It's like the bouquet is totally different. It's got all kinds of flavors and aromas that are going on in there. So a vintner, a grape farmer, will often tell you that a suffering vine makes great wine. And if you can get a person, an individual off and let them see that through their suffering, our God can do something amazing. Or through that suffering, this moment of rest can propel you forward through it. But that suffering causes your roots to go way down deep to produce that incredible fruit. So don't look at suffering and be like, oh, why is this happening to me? Look at suffering and say, what can I learn from this? How can I navigate through it? And how can maybe a moment of rest inspire me forward to produce even more fruit in the future?
I wonder if you could speak a little bit to what this looked like in your own life for you and your family. My understanding is that you were in ministry and then you took some time. What did that include? What did that look like and feel like?
Yeah, we had the glorious bubble. I mean, we had, everything was going along swimmingly, which I think is the overarching, narrative of a lot of our stories, is like everything was great. And then, a lot of times it's, and then COVID. I mean, that's what's happened recently. But I think in our lives, everything was fantastic. And then we had a series of events that happened that if they were in isolation would have been difficult, but because they all came together, it was like devastating. So we had moved and planted a church. So if you're a startup kind of person or leading an organization, I'm like, I feel for you. Like, I remember those days. Very, very difficult. You're always on. You're just working your head off. The second thing was we adopted from the Philippines. We had 3 biological children of our own. We really felt this move to adopt. Back then, like the whole human trafficking thing wasn't even really talked about, but we had discovered it, and we're like, oh, no way. Like, there's no way this really goes on. What can we do? And to quote a famous pastor, he once said, what you wish you could do for everybody, maybe you can do for one. And so we were like, well, maybe by inviting, somebody into our home, we can help that. So we adopted. It's beautiful, but it's also very challenging. Those of you that are adopted or adoptees, like, it's challenging on both ends. Like, it's a whole new dynamic. So had moved, planted a church, adopted. And then my wife, my beautiful wife, she lost her parents back to back, boom, boom, unrelated illnesses. They were in their early 60s. They died within 52 days of each other. And we were devastated, Josiah. I mean, we were just like, the weight and the pain. It's like, not only did we have loss and grief, but for us, it was questions of faith. It was like, where were you at in this? I mean, why didn't you see us? Why didn't you answer our prayers? So we were going through that together. And my wife, she looked at me one day and she was like, you got to get me out of here. Like, we got to get out. Like, we can't just keep going on. So we'd had a little bit of insurance money from her parents, and we ended up going to Europe for 2 months with our kids. Now, if you're thinking, ooh, sabbatical, beautiful. Yeah. Take 4 kids with you, just relocating your chaos. Okay. I mean, it was chaotic here. It's chaotic over there. But what was beautiful is, no emails, no phone calls. My staff and everything, they were taking care of things at the church at that time. And we came back and we found the space was very healing. So those sacred spaces, those beautiful Airbnbs that we were part of, or some of the little hotels that we would grab, with the kids, like, beautiful healing space. We were missing that sacred face. We needed somebody, a man, woman, couple, whatever the case might be, to walk us through what we were experiencing. Like, are we crazy? Like, the doubts that we have, is that okay? Like, can we articulate these? And the pain, like, we were waking up crying in our sleep. Like, is this emotionally healthy? So we came back from that, and this would have been like 2013, 14. We came back from that like, where do leaders go when they experience these things? Because inevitably it's going to happen in some way. And can we create a space and be the face to be able to help these people navigate? So that kind of began the genesis of the dream of like, I love pastoring. We love what we do. We loved our community. But can we just speak to the leader? Because they don't have anybody to talk to. When, if people of faith, when they have a problem, they go to their pastor, their priest or whatever. Where does that guy go? Where does that gal go? I have no idea. Well, they come to us. And so for us, we were going to start our own 501c3. We had mapped this whole thing out, and we discovered what was then Life Impact, now Oasis R.E.S.T International. They've been doing it 20 years. We're like, why reinvent the wheel? Let's learn from these guys. Let's learn best practices. There's a wealth of wisdom and experience. And so we joined on to just be hosts and serve leaders. And in a whacked out set of circumstances, I've now become the executive director of said organization, to which when I was asked by the former executive director, I said, David, that is the single stupidest idea I've ever heard. I don't want to do this. I'm done leading. I don't want to do this anymore. I love what I do. I love the team that we have, the hosts we have around the world. It's an amazing opportunity. And right now, everybody's talking about this. So we have some practical solutions for it, which are great.
I love it. I'll link to in the show notes to your website where people can learn more. But I think one of the things that is fascinating to me is sort of this distributed concept of how you have hosts in all these different places. There's this one-on-one attentive hospitality care. I'm curious what you're thinking about now as you look into the future. Kind of what are your hopes and dreams of where the organization could go from here?
I think for us, there's a number of things that we see in the future. But right now, the demand for rest, if you just think about your small circle of friends or the men and women that you interact with on a global scale, levels of anxiety and stress, and like that, just as you mentioned, that close, line of burnout. Like, when do I step over the line and I actually am burned out? Burned out is actually a clinical kind of thing. A lot of folks will say you're more browned out. Not quite burned out, but you're almost burnt toast. So it's like, how, with all of the discussions going on, how do we offer practical solutions to that in our context? So I think for us, it's like, we have the opportunity to say, this man or woman, we need to grow our ministry. We need to grow the locations. We need to grow the opportunities. We need men and women. Right now, folks can call us and it's like, we don't have availability for XYZ number of months. Well, that's like death to a person who is in, almost in burnout, are weary, are going through a struggle. So we want to be able to, we see, like in the next 10 years, 100 of these Oasis locations being planted strategically around the world, finding those hubs, those Budapest of the world or the Chiang Mai's of the world or those international Paris communities where we can just dot some of these Oasis around those natural hubs. And so when men and women come in, either they're local, they drive in, train in, or maybe from out of the area, planing in, it's an easy access to this strategic location. You've got high quality hosts who are highly skilled in hospitality that have all these other skills and giftedness, and then you can rest in these places. So the expansion of this based on need is something we have to do. I think about it every day of my life. Again, there's a scripture verse quoted in the Old Testament and New Testament. And again, whether you prescribe to that or not, it's in there. It's part of, the historical side of things. It basically says that, when it comes to Jesus, God, the Holy Spirit, a bruised reed he will not break, or a smoldering flask, a wick that's about to go out, he will not squash out. And I think there are so many men and women that are about to break. They're about to be extinguished. That flame, that life that was in them is about to be extinguished, spiritually speaking, or maybe emotionally speaking. Hey, how can we help straighten that reed again and get it swaying healthily in the breeze? How can we get that flame to grow even more by coming to one of our places? That's like the hope that we have. And that's what excites me, watching people come in very weary and leave energized. I need more of these places. We've got to plant more. We've got to have more resources, more hosts, more awareness of what we do to be able to meet the demand that's out there right now.
For people that are interested, want to learn more, where would you point them, and kind of any kind of closing thoughts on how someone might learn more and get involved?
Absolutely. You can always connect with me on LinkedIn if you just want to DM. I think that's actually how you and I got acquainted, listening to one of your amazing podcasts. But yeah, you can always DM me. You can look at oasisrest.org. It's a very easy, we tried to make our website very navigable. It literally just says, tired, we can help. Because we're like, if you're a weary leader, you probably don't want to make a lot of decisions. Like, just click a button and tell me what to do. So you can go to oasisrest.org. You can always contact me. I can put you in contact with some of the other hosts that are out there. Our website shows a map of where they're located, and you can connect with them. So if you happen to be a leader in Slovakia, or somebody that's engaged in missions work overseas, you can find that on our website. It's right there. Our amazing team. I'd put anybody anywhere. They're amazing people. But I think the biggest thing for me is just spread the awareness. All of us know somebody. All of us know. So if we're not that person, there's a good chance they're right beside you that could really benefit from an Oasis Rest retreat. Like, they need this in their life. So spread the awareness out there. I think the second thing for us is help us with people that might be great hosts. I mean, inevitably, amongst your listeners, there's probably somebody who's like, I've always thought about doing this. This would be really cool. Yeah, just contact me, because we'd love to have those strategic places. And then, as you alluded to, funding's a huge deal. Everybody's out there, especially around Thanksgiving and now into Christmas. It's the end of the year. We could really expand with some of the resources and funding that I know men and women out there, very generous people, are like, I just need to know where to point it. You can pour into us. You want to touch a lot of ministries? We do that because we offer rest to the leader. And then that leader goes on and does amazing things. So yeah, those are big ways for us.
I love it. I'll include links to your website in the show notes. Nathan, awesome. I learned a lot from you. I appreciate what you're doing. Thanks so much for taking some time to speak with us today.
Absolutely, Josiah.